Once upon a time, in a village, there lived a girl named Adure. She was young, bold, and full of fire. Everyone in Umokwe knew her as the girl who always asked why and never settled for because we said so. She questioned everything, even the things that weren't meant to be questioned. Adure lived with her grandmother Mame Ezewai, a wise old woman known across the land for her knowledge of herbs, spirits, and stories that could stop a child's cry mid-scream. Mame Ezewai had only one rule that she never joked with. One rule she repeated more than she repeated Adure's name. Do not sweep at night. Never, not even once. Adure would scoff and roll her eyes every time the warning came. She would say things like, Mama, this is 2025, not 1823. You people carry fear like handbag. And Mama would just look at her, tired eyes full of history. Some things are older than calendars, she would say. The night is not your friend when you stir the ground. The dust you raise can wake things that should sleep forever. But Adure didn't believe. She had swapped the compound hundreds of times in the morning, in the afternoon, even once at dusk when the sun had barely slipped behind the hills. Nothing happened. So to her, this don't sweep at night story was just another baseless village superstition passed down to scare children. Then one Friday evening, the sky turned grey earlier than usual. Mame Ezewai told Adure she would be attending the women's village vigil at the central shrine. She warned her again, this time a little firmer. Do not sweep. Lock the doors. If the compound is dirty, it can wait for morning. Don't tempt what you cannot see. Adure nodded, but not because she agreed. She just didn't want another lecture. The rain came gently that evening, just enough to loosen the mango leaves and scatter them all over the compound. When the rain stopped, the moon pushed through the clouds and lit up the mess. Adure came outside and frowned. The place looked untidy, and she hated untidiness. She stared at the broom for a while. She remembered her grandmother's words, but then she shook her head and muttered, Nothing will happen. I'll sweep quickly and go inside. She picked up the broom and began to sweep. At first, everything was quiet. The sound of the broom brushing the earth filled the air. But after a while, the silence began to feel unnatural. The kind of silence that doesn't rest. It watches. Then she heard it, a voice not loud, but not a whisper either, clear and direct. Who wakes up the dust? Adure paused. She looked around, no one. She continued sweeping. Again the voice came, this time slower. You were told, you did not listen. A strange breeze passed through the compound. Not cold, not warm, just strange. She turned towards the mango tree and froze. 3 figures stood under it. They were tall, too tall. Their arms hung too low. Their eyes glowed faintly and their feet didn't touch the ground. They didn't speak with their mouths. They spoke directly into her head. Adure dropped the broom. She tried to run, but her legs gave way. Her body didn't respond. She opened her mouth to scream, but not even a breath escaped. One of the figures moved closer and raised a hand. A powder, dark like ashes, rose and entered her eyes, nose, mouth. Everything went blank. When Mame Ezewai returned the next morning, she found her granddaughter lying in the middle of the compound, motionless, eyes open. Her lips moved slightly like she was trying to speak, but no sound came. Adure was not dead, but something had left her. The villagers came. They tried prayers, they tried native remedies, they tried fasting, but Adure remained silent, not a word, not even a hum. Mame Ezewai didn't need any seer to explain what had happened. She already knew. Her granddaughter had broken the one rule the spirits in their land took seriously. She had disturbed the ground when the watchers were walking, and now they had taken something from her, her voice. Days passed. Weeks followed. Adure was now a shadow of herself. She couldn't go to school. She couldn't even go to the market. Children pointed at her and whispered. Adults avoided her. People feared what she might carry. She became an outsider in her own home. Then one evening, Mama Ezewai packed a small bag, tied her wrapper tightly, and told Adure, "We are going to the forest." They traveled deep into the woods, beyond the footpath, beyond the river. They reached the shrine of Dibiuro, a spiritual healer older than memory. He lived where no birds chirped, where no leaves danced, where silence sat like a king. When they arrived, he looked at Adure and said, "She swept what was not hers to clean. She called what should have been left alone, and now the earth holds her voice in its mouth." Mama Ezewai begged him for help. He nodded slowly and said, "There is a way, but it is not without risk." He gave Adure a gourd of water, a black broom, and a single white feather. Then he spoke in low tones. "You must return to the same ground at the same hour, midnight. Pour the water to calm the dust. Sweep in reverse to undo what was stirred. Place the feather at the root of the mango tree to offer peace. If the spirits accept, they will return what they took. If they do not, then you must learn to live with silence." That night, the moon was round and red. The village was asleep. But in Mama Ezewai's compound, a ritual had begun. Adure poured the water on the sand. She picked up the black broom with shaky hands. She swept backwards, her heart pounding with every emotion. She placed the feather at the foot of the tree. Then she waited. The ground trembled slightly. The leaves rustled even though there was no wind. And then once again, they came, the three figures. This time, they didn't speak immediately. They just circled her slowly, watching, listening to her every heartbeat. Finally, one of them said, "You mocked what you didn't understand." Another said, "You disturbed peace. You disrespected silence." Then the third asked, "What do you offer now?" Adure dropped to her knees. Her face was soaked in tears. Her hands trembled. Her lips parted. "I'm sorry," she whispered. The moment those words left her mouth, the wind stopped. The night sighed, the ground settled, and the spirit disappeared like smoke. Adure collapsed into Mama Ezewai's arms, sobbing, but she could speak again. From that day on, she never questioned that rule again. She never swept after sunset. In fact, she became the one who warned others. She would sit with younger girls and say to them, "There are rules you don't break, not because they are scary, but because someone before you already paid the price." She told them what happened, not to frighten them, but to teach them, and they listened. Because when Adure tells the story of the night she swept and lost her voice, there is something in her eyes, something ancient. Something that reminds you that not all warnings are meant to be explained. Some are just meant to be obeyed. And two, in Umokwe, no one ever sweeps at night. Not anymore. Because they remembered Adure, and the ground still does too. Thank you for listening to this amazing story. Please like, subscribe, and share for more amazing stories like this. Thank you.